Howdy folks. Today we're going to talk about jQuery events. And like the DOM, jQuery has the ability to add event listeners to various events. The way it does it is a little different. And so sometimes it's a little bit better, sometimes it's a little bit, worse, but we're going to take a look at it. Let's get started. So here's the code that I have today. It's a simple HTML page. We've got a form, it's got an ID, it's got a name, and it's got a submit button. And then we've got a section here with a bunch of different buttons. Lots of buttons. And then I have my jQuery, and I have my script. So first what I want to do, I want to attach an event listener to this form when it gets submitted. Just pull that to the side. So using jQuery, I'm going to grab the selector. Then for jQuery, it is not add event listener, it's just simply on. Like add event listener, you start off with the event name and then a callback function. The event that you get, you can do everything normal, so event.prevent default. Why do we want to do that? Because if we're submitting a form, we want to avoid the default prevention, otherwise it'll refresh the page. Okay, and then I'm going to get the name, val, and I'm just going to alert your name. Oops, name is name. Very simple. Just on, submit, function event, and you could see same exact thing, everything normal. Let's take a look at how it performs. There it is, just like normal. So any normal event can go in here. You have the key events, the mouse events, click, mouse down, mouse over, stuff like that, submit. Any event can go in here. Under the hood, jQuery is attaching an event listener with add event listener. So this is just a nice wrapper around it. So now we get to this section. Now we had an example that we've gone over before where let's say that you want to handle clicks on every single one of these buttons. So one way about doing that is you could loop through every single one of those buttons and set an event listener. So let me show you how jQuery does that. It's pretty cool. So what I can actually do is I could say section button. What is that? That's a compound selector that says get me every section and every button within it. Now jQuery, remember, has that jQuery array. So I could say buttons equals, and then let's console log buttons. Spell it correctly. And now we get that jQuery array with all our buttons. jQuery doesn't need you to loop. So imagine if we were in the DOM, we'd actually have to loop over this whole array and call add event listener. We don't need to do that with jQuery. We can actually just say on, click. What happens now? The element, this adds a click handler to every single one of those buttons. Because jQuery's functions are designed to work on the jQuery array. And what does jQuery do? It actually uses this. That is the element that is currently triggering the event. Kind of nice. And when that's useful for is because if we're doing this and we're saying, oh, what button got clicked? Well, now we have a way to find out. So I can click this, you can see button 9, button 5, button 7, button 6, works perfectly well. So that works, right? And then I can have this. The thing to note is that this is not a jQuery object. This is a DOM object. So if I try to get the value off of this, like I say, oh yeah, give me the attribute data number. Okay, that's the jQuery way to get the attribute. No, it's going to say not a function. So what you actually have to do is you have to wrap this in the jQuery function, which turns it into a jQuery object. I know it's a little weird, but let's just say data number equals, and then log data number. It's a little strange, but that's just how it's set up. Okay. Oh, and you have to spell console correctly. Which, I will say the number of times I've misspelled console right? And there you go. And now you get the specific number for it. This is a lot easier than doing it through the native DOM, right? A lot easier. But it gets even better. Because right now, this section button.onClick, what if we're dynamically adding more buttons? What if we just want to do kind of similar to how the DOM did? Remember, like in the other case, we would actually attach the event listener to this section and then listen to make sure that the target was a button. Well, jQuery can do that too. So we're going to do just section on click. Now remember, the reason this works for buttons is because if you click this, it's going to bubble up. It's going to propagate up to its parent. So this click handler will actually be called for every single button that's clicked. So okay, let me actually just copy this, put this in here. We run it again. Now it's undefined. Why? Because this is actually the section. Even though it's the button being clicked, it's still bubbling up to the section, so the section's handling it. So what you can do is this will actually take a third parameter, and that's another selector. So that looks interesting, right? What does this mean? Well, here's the event, and we know this third one is the callback. What is this middle one? This middle one is a filter. So what this is saying is only call this function on buttons that are clicked within the section. You might wonder, why is that important? Well, let's say padding, let's see. Oh, it's not going to work actually. I need to put some CSS in here. Style, section, button, margin, 10 pixels. So let's say we spread these buttons out a little bit. If I click right here, I am clicking that section. So if I take this out, you can see I am clicking that section now. I'm now clicking a button, I'm clicking the section. The section click handler gets triggered both cases. Because really, if you think about it, I'm clicking something within the section, it triggers that because it bubbles up to its parent. If I click this, I am actually clicking that section, which means, of course, the click handler would fire. This is the reason why we do that filtering. So, if I push this in here, put that button in there, I click here, nothing happens. I click the button, you notice now it actually does the number. Why? Because this is now referring to the button, not the section. So this is one of the things I think where jQuery actually does it a lot better than the DOM, because in the DOM you'd have to have something like section lm dot, yes, I know it doesn't exist, I'm trying to make a point, add event listener click function event if event.target matches button, right? And then you have to say, okay, then we get the event.target, that's what we want, and we get the data number on it. Here, it's just a parameter. You just put it in there. So these are the ways that jQuery handles its selectors, or its events. So for one, it's just on. And you get the event like normal. Any of the normal properties that you're expecting on an event, the key code, the key char, mouse button, functions like prevent default, you can get those here. Now, if you have multiple items, you can also, with one single function call, attach an event handler to all of them. Because jQuery works on the jQuery array, so it'll work across multiple items. In that case, this is actually the DOM element, not the jQuery element, but the DOM element that got the event triggered on it. And so if you want to use jQuery on it, you have to wrap it in the jQuery function. Though you could also use DOM methods at that point. It's totally fine. But if you're already using jQuery, you're probably going to want the jQuery methods. You can also have a filter in here, and then that will filter only to children that have that event triggered that match that filter. In that case, that child will actually be this. If you leave that out, this will be the parent even if the child is clicked. So that is jQuery events. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you all next time.